Learning how to use all the different guns is going to take you some time, but you can shave off a lot of that by knowing these simple tips. What's going on, ProGuides fam? I'm Kangas, and in today's video, I'm giving you our Global Elite Coaches one tip for each and every gun. So hit that sub button and let's get into it.
Let's start with the first gun on the list being the USP. For the USP, the first tip is honestly just to tap slowly. Spamming is something that a lot of people love doing with the silenced pistol, and it's just wrong. Of course, if your opponents didn't buy armor and you can hit them 4 times in the body, aim punching them the whole way through, then spamming isn't too bad, but headshots are what you need to get in order to win fights against armored opponents, both on pistol rounds and even against full buys when you're full eco'd. If staying calm and shooting similarly is difficult to you, then fear not, you can always practice it by just playing some pistol-only deathmatch, which you can find under the community servers. But if you're more of a P2K kind of guy, we got you covered as well. Of course, since the guns are similar, tapping slowly still applies, but since you got more bullets, you can spam and pre-fire a bit more. The biggest difference between the two guns really is in the fact that the P2K has extra bullets, so if you're going to end up using it, make sure that you're abusing that fact. That means you should definitely try to spam smokes and pre-fire your corners. I mean, you're allowed regardless, so you're not really losing much doing so. For the Glock, the number one tip you should consider is you can easily and effectively run and gun. The Glock's running accuracy is amazing, and as long as you don't spam it, you have a really good chance even at longer ranges. A lot of people have the misconception that the Glock is about as accurate as a water gun, but in reality, the stats just don't reflect that. The gun is actually very accurate, and as long as you don't spam it, you'll begin to notice that quickly as well. So with the starter pistols out of the way, let's talk about our question of the day. Today's question is, what is your all-time favorite gun? If you've seen any of my other previous videos, you probably know that mine is the AWP. I just love that satisfaction of the one click, one kill, but let me know yours in the comments down below. So one of the most commonly used pistols, especially on eco rounds, is the P250. It's great for its price and is very dangerous up close, even against helmeted opponents. What it's not often used for though is T-side pistol rounds, at least not in matchmaking. It's very easy and effective for just one teammate to buy 2 P250s and a flash and drop the 2 guns over. That way, your team will be running around with 2 raid bosses that even get some flash support, meaning that as long as there's some teamwork, you should win that round most of the time. For the CZ, the playstyle is pretty straightforward. Just make sure that you're hiding in the most annoying corners that you can find. Taking some risk in your positioning on a round where you're only on a CZ is almost always worthwhile, and as long as you play in a corner that you yourself find hard to clear, you should have a great amount of success. So when it comes to the 5.7, things are very similar. You again want to be playing close and perhaps in a bit of a pushed up position. But the biggest difference is that it's a lot easier to kill multiple people using it. The CZ can realistically only kill 1 or 2 people before it has to reload, while the 5.7 you can basically just ace, if you hit headshots at least. Basically, the trade-off is either buying a more difficult to use gun in the 5.7 that does allow you to position a bit more freely and kill multiple people, or just buy a CZ and spray someone down on their side, but probably only get 1. A gun in the same slot that's actually a lot different though is the Tech 9, since with that, you can basically do anything. The most important thing to remember when using it is simply using the correct shooting styles. The gun is very accurate when both running and tapping slowly, but it becomes very random when spamming. Make sure to keep your shooting style in mind and don't spam your Tech 9 at longer ranges. Tapping with a gun is very good, and you should do it even at shorter ranges if you have the aim to hit the headshots anyway. Now, the big boy gun, at least when it comes to pistols. Obviously, we're talking about the Deagle here, and it is one of the most difficult in the whole game to use. It has the very skillful quirk of being able to hit one-shot headshots, and it's a staple in pro play because of that fact. And of course, in order to optimally use that, you should practice your aim for a relative 6,000 hours a day. But why do that when you can just abuse the broken part of the gun and just double body shot people instead? Just holding an angle close and spamming your Deagle as hard as you can while crouched doesn't really take that much skill, but it's still stupid good, so abuse it while you can. Finally, since we did say there's a tip for every gun, we have the R8 revolver. For that gun, it's pretty simple. In low ranks, you can get away with double body shotting people, especially at longer ranges. And in the high ranks, you can just equip the Deagle instead. It's very straightforward, but honestly, it is that simple. But if you really want to use the gun, make sure you're playing around cover so you get the chance to hit that second shot, and maybe you can do something. Speaking of guns that are kind of useless, but we have to include anyway, we have the Negev. For our big tip on this gun, it goes burr, but it only does so after like a second of firing. So that means that you gotta pray you get lucky with the early spread, use it to spam a smoke, or more optimally hold a close angle where the early randomness doesn't really matter that much. And then you can use the burr part to deny any potential trades. A good example of a spot you can play in a Negev is in Pop Dog on Train. If anyone hops down the ladder to kill you, you just spray them down. And if anyone tries to trade the kill, it's basically impossible as well. So now that we mentioned the Negev, we probably should also mention the M249, and for that gun, the only tip we're gonna give is just don't buy it unless you're up at least 13 rounds. Buying it at 13-0 or 14-0 is fine, but not at 13-1 after you just lost a round because you got trolled and bought a horrible gun, let alone if the score line is even closer. And now that we're on the topic of useless guns, why not talk about the PP-BIZO? Anything the PP-BIZO can do, another SMG can do better. Literally, its only purpose is to mow down 5 full ecoed players on Banana of Inferno, and otherwise it's just completely useless. So don't buy it, and no, it's not the new undiscovered meta. And a gun that's in the same boat is the sawed-off. It's useless. If you want to buy it, don't. If you're really down bad for money, buy a Nova instead. Just don't buy the sawed-off, please. And speaking of the Nova, it's also not really a gun that you want to buy as well. It's worse than the XM1014, and you should only really buy it when you can't afford any other options. But even then, you still probably want to consider buying a pistol instead. If you do have enough money though and want to use a shotgun, just buy the XM. Speaking of which, when it comes to a tip for the XM, what you need to do is learn about its range. The range of the gun is actually a lot longer than people think it is, but you really just need to learn where to shoot. To do that, the best thing you can do is hop into aimbots and learn about the maximum range and how far it really is. Compared to the sawed-off, the CTs get a much better deal in the form of the Mag 7. It's a pretty solid gun and actually has a decent one-shot range. That being said, you do need to make sure that you get the kill with that first shot because otherwise you should be dead 9 out of 10 times, so yeah, pay close attention. Now for my favorite gun, the AWP, the biggest tip that we have is watching the Simple Master course. If there's anyone who can tell you how to AWP, it's gonna be Simple himself, right? So if you wanna know what he has to say about AWPing, plus a whole lot more about CS in general, go check out ProGuides.com and give his course a look. But I'll still throw you a bonus tip. You also have to make sure that you're not playing in a static way with this gun. Basically, you wanna make sure that you're always switching up your play and try and stay unpredictable. For the AWP's little brother, aka the SSG-08, aka the Scout, the biggest tip is to use the running speed, but don't overuse it. You run super fast with the Scout, even when zoomed in, and almost everybody realizes that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be running all the time. Using the movement speed to quickly re-peek after you tag the player is great, but holding an angle normally, while standing still, is not something you should avoid either. So when it comes to the auto snipers on the CT side, aka the SCAR 20, the one thing that's important is that you hold angles that are difficult to peek for rifles. You don't have to hold strictly op angles since you do have a lot more freedom with the auto fire it possesses, but you want to make sure that it's a difficult angle to get cleared out by a rifler. And for the T-side auto sniper, the G3 SG1 is fairly simple. Just don't buy it. You're only going to gift it to your opponents, and on the CT side, it's going to be a lot more scary. If you really want a sniper, just buy an op instead. And before we finish up the rifles, let's quickly go through the SMGs. Firstly, the Mac-10, and with that, the most important thing to focus on is making space for your riflers. You could literally just jump in with a rifler behind you and you're already doing your job. Just make sure that you play together with them and give them the proper space to get kills. For the MP9, the biggest one is to really just learn how to spray the gun, since if you're able to control it, it's just criminally strong, so make sure that you're practicing its recoil. The MP7, on the other hand, I would literally say just give up on it and instead spend your time on learning the MP9. It's worse in almost every situation and it's also more expensive, so just not worth. The MP5 does have some uses as it has a silencer and therefore is great to use in one ways, but there's no reason to use it over the other SMGs unless you're gonna spam smokes. The UMP45 is kind of in a similar spot. It just can't beat the MP9 since the big nerfs it's got, and now only really gets used because it feels familiar to some. So the same thing applies, learn to use the MP9 instead. The P90 is perhaps the one gun that does more damage than an MP9, but it's also in a very awkward spot for an SMG. It doesn't have the same kill reward, and it also costs a lot more. Basically, you may as well just buy a FAMAS for cheaper and do a lot more with it. Speaking of the FAMAS, let's talk about it. The tip for this gun is to either play it on very long range against pistols and SMGs, or play it short to mid range against other rifles. The gun has fantastic accuracy compared to weaker guns, but against rifles, it just doesn't have what it takes in the accuracy department, so you want to make sure that you close that distance a bit. And for the Galil, the same thing applies, but the more important thing is that you finally learned the spray pattern. The Galil is simply a very strong gun for its price, and it can definitely carry you in a second round force, but in order to do that, you need to know its spray pattern. For the AK, what is by far the most important thing is proper pre-aiming. In theory, you could just one-tap everyone out of the server if you have proper pre-aiming, and it's definitely the most important factor when it comes to success with the gun. So just make sure that you're working on that, whether that would be in deathmatch or just by utilizing the YPRAC practice maps. For the M4A1S, one thing to consider is the fact that you do not have tracers, and it's thus the premier gun to spam smokes with. It usually baits people into trying to shoot you back, and once it does, you can see exactly where they're shooting you from because of their tracers, while they have no way to see you. The M4A4 isn't terrible to spam smokes with either, but it's just not as good. A general tip for CT side play with it though is to play around your oppers. Ops on the CT side are very important, and as a rifler, it's your job to make them comfortable. Hold the angles that they can't, and make sure that you're playing around them. Finally, the two scoped rifles, the AUG and the Krieg. Let's start off with the AUG. This gun is really great when it comes to longer range duels against rifles or SMGs, but it suffers against ops at the same range. That means that if you don't expect your opponent to have ops, you should play those longer ranged angles. But if you do, make sure to play really close and try to get that one-shot headshot range that it offers. The Krieg used to be really great, but now it's just a bit meh. It does really well holding long sight lines, and it is good when it comes to accuracy, but that's about it. If you want to use it, do it for the previously two mentioned purposes and tap as much as possible. Tapping is about as fast as spraying with it anyway.
Well, there you have it. One tip for every single gun, even the worthless ones. But if this video isn't enough, remember that you can also head on over to ProGuides.com and check out one of our Pro Master courses, or even sign up with a coach if you prefer that one-on-one learning style. But if you did learn anything from this video today, or just enjoyed it, remember to leave a like and sub to the channel so that we can keep bringing you content just like this. That's it for today, so as always, best of luck on the grind, and I'll see you next time.